Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Lentil Flatbread. That's right, when I first heard about this, or I should say overheard about this, since I was actually eavesdropping on some vegans. And how did I know they were vegans? Oh, you can tell. But anyway, they were talking about this flatbread you could make using nothing but lentils and water, and it kind of sounded too good to be true. So I did a search and then a test, and I'm happy to report they are real and spectacular. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with basically the one and only ingredient. And that would be a cup of red lentils, which I probably would have called orange lentils. And the reason we want to use this variety is because the hull's been removed and they're split in half, which is why these are the fastest cooking of all the lentils and why they work so well in this recipe. And what we'll do to prep these is add them to a blender or a food processor if you want. And then we will add some nice cold fresh water, and we will let these soak for at least 3 hours. And yes, I believe you can go longer, but I hear about 3 hours is the minimum. So we'll go ahead and let those sit. And after the soaking period, they will have swollen up. Or is it swelled up? Anyway, they're going to be all swolled up and probably look something like this. And that's it. Once that's been accomplished, we'll go ahead and blend these on high speed until we formed a very smooth, relatively thin batter. And believe it or not, and at first I didn't, that's it. We will simply pour that into a bowl. And then if we want, and you definitely do, we will season this with some salt. Because as I've said many times, a bland legume is a bad legume. So I am definitely going to stir in some salt at this point. And that's it. Once blended and probably seasoned, we can, if we want, use this right away. But I do think it's better if we wrap it up and pop it in the fridge overnight. Okay, I can't tell you exactly what happens, but the taste and texture seem to be a little better. But fair warning, if you do make them the next day, the mixture is going to kind of separate. So before we use it, we'll need to take a whisk and give it a good mix. And you'll also probably notice it will have thickened up just a touch. And that's it. As soon as that's mixed up, we can head to the stove and cook these up, which I did in a nonstick pan set over medium-high heat. And while that's getting hot, we're going to carefully rub the surface with an olive-oiled paper towel, just to lubricate that a little bit. And then once we think that pan is hot, but before it starts to smoke, we will pour in about 1/3 cup of our batter. And then we'll use the back of a ladle or a big spoon to sort of spread that from the center out to create a nice even circle about 5 or 6 inches across. And then what we'll do for the next 2 minutes or so is absolutely nothing. But what I would do at this point, since the pan is nice and hot, is we'll lower our heat to medium, and we will just stay there unless we feel like we need to raise it again. And when we see bubbles breaking through the top, that usually indicates the bottom's cooked long enough. But before we try to flip it over, we want to take the edge of our spatula and kind of slide it underneath to make sure that surface has been seared and it's going to be okay to flip. Since the only way to screw these up is to try to turn them too early. But once we think we're good, we'll go ahead and flip that over. Oh, and you see how I tried to shake the pan to center it? I probably shouldn't have done that. And we certainly don't want to stick our spatula under there to center it yet, because until this batter cooks a little bit, it is very sticky and soft, and you will totally tear your flatbread. So I just left it alone for about a minute, at which point it was pretty easy to move. But anyway, we'll give that second side about 2 minutes total, and believe it or not, that's it. It really is truly an absolutely simple procedure. So let me go ahead and transfer this onto a plate, so we can take a look at what we got. And what we got is a pretty attractive, relatively thin flatbread. Or at least that's what I'm calling it. Okay, if it was a little thinner, we could go with crepe. Or I guess you could call these lentil tortillas. But anyway, no matter what you call them, they're very soft and flexible, but surprisingly strong. And if we want, we can roll them up. Or if you're not into that, you could just fold it up into triangles, which would look pretty nice sitting next to a bowl of curry. And as far as the texture goes, I found these to be surprisingly bread-like. Okay, yes, a soft, spongy bread, but it still has a pleasant starchiness, and it does have a little bit of elasticity. And then as far as the flavor goes, it is extremely, extremely neutral, which is a euphemism we use in the business to describe things that are not very flavorful. But that is not a bad thing at all, since the reason we would make a stack of these would be to eat them with things that are very, very flavorful. But anyway, having said that, the flavor is very pleasant. And sure, if you wanted to add something besides the salt, like some ground chili, some curry powder, some turmeric, fenugreek. Do you have any fenugreek? But anyway, the point is you can flavor these any way you want. And besides how easy these are, they are super inexpensive. Okay, out of 1 cup of red lentils, if you make them this size, you're probably going to be able to make about 8 to 10, which is producing a lot of food from a relatively small amount of raw material. And as you cook these, which again, I'm going to probably do on medium most of the way, but as you cook these and pile them up, just like when we're doing actual flatbread or tortillas, I like to keep a towel over the plate to help hold in some of that heat, which I think helps the texture and probably keeps them from drying out. And just imagine taking one of these freshly made flatbreads and using it to roll up a beautiful spicy curry chicken salad. Oh yeah, that would be good. In fact, forget about imagining it. Let me show you exactly what that looks like for real. And of course, this is just one of like thousands of things you could do with these. Since these are going to work about the same as anything you would serve with crepes or wraps or tortillas or any of your grain-based flatbreads. So we can add versatile to the very long checklist of reasons to make this. Oh, and I should mention, by adjusting the amount of water you soak your lentils in, you can make these flatbreads a little thicker. Okay, the less water you use, the thicker the batter will be. But for me, the ratio I decided was ideal was 2 cups of water for every 1 cup of lentils. But as always, feel free to experiment. I mean, you are, after all, the Chrissy Teigen of eating like a vegan. But don't just make these because they're vegan, or gluten-free, or grain-free, or low-carb, or high-protein, or super affordable, or super simple and fast to make. You should make them because they're a very delicious thing to eat. Okay, I was actually surprised just how much I enjoyed these. And whether you're a vegan or not, I really do think you're going to love these. Which is why I really do hope you give them a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.